Hi, I'm Tamsin Silver, and I'm an author with Falstaff Books. Thank you for joining me. This is my third reading with things with Mark the Necromancer. This is a standalone novel of mine. It's probably my only standalone. I tend to write series. But this one, I'm hoping to eventually write a second book with these characters because there's a lot of love for Sabrina and Alex, and I'd like to eventually delve into more books about them solving crimes in New York City. So anyway, one of my favorite scenes in this is when Sabrina accidentally ends up on the death highway. To kind of explain a little bit of this, Sabrina is a vampire, but she had powers before she died that had been blocked by her family. So by dying and then being reborn as a vampire, she now is technically a necromancer. And she has the ability for her body to go to sleep on this plane, and then her subconscious can travel on the death highway. And so we're going to start on page 175, and it's part 17. And it's her first trip to hell. I'm not going to take you to the point where she meets Lucifer. We'll save that for another time. But you get to meet the people who guard hell here. And I love these guys. And one of them becomes very important as the series will go on. So thanks for joining me for reading. And we'll get going. I awoke on the death highway, floating along with no clue how long I'd been there. I looked around and saw others speeding by, taking exits alone or with a group. I thought of Amanda and Todd and hoped they too were traveling together, picking up where they'd left off and mending the damage from the lives on Earth. The thought made me grin until I remembered the others I left behind. Alex would be so angry at me when I got back. I'd be lucky if he didn't sire bond me away from here without a loophole Ginny could use. Speaking of, where was she? What if she couldn't find me? I felt horrible for leaving them all, for making the decision that put them all in a place to clean up after me. But that's what would have to be happening right now. They would have to hide my body somewhere and tell people I was out of the country or something. Would I shrivel up without feeding if I was gone too long? Would I be mummified if I returned? The thought scared me almost as much as being stuck on this plane for eternity. And what about Jeremy? Where was he? Then there was my blackmailer. Thankfully, I'd set up automatic deposits so at least the assassin wouldn't come looking for me. But would that really help if I was gone too long? What if my mother noticed? Collecting myself, I decided to fly along until I found the exit for the New York City and go find Mimi so I could tell her I was okay. Yet as I drifted along the highway with the dead, I began to feel sleepy again, remembering Ginny's words and how we were safe to fly along with our eyes shut. I allowed them to drift close, letting all the pain from my guilt and the memories of the last few weeks fade away. I happily stayed in the trance-like state as I slowly traveled along until I rammed into someone or something, followed by more bumps and voices of people yelling things like, "Look where you're going," and "Where did you learn to drive?" And of course, "Women drivers, sheesh." On the last one, I started to open my eyes to tell them what he could do with his opinion when I was bumped 2 more times and drifted away from the noise. Figuring I was too far to be yelling back at them, and happy to be free of the traffic situation, I just relaxed back into my trance. "Honey, you don't want to go that way," a man yelled out to someone. I wondered what exit some woman was trying to take and laughed as I pictured some guy trying to stop his wife from going to Vegas. In fact, I was so busy enjoying my stress-free zone of rest that it had never occurred to me the comment had been for me. I just would float along free of a care or a plan until I'd finished paying the price for saving Todd. I was okay with that. It wasn't until I heard banging rock music that I even considered that there might be a problem. Normally, a ride on the highway was silent, save for voices of the dead as they spoke to others or themselves. But the song became louder, and I opened my eyes to see I was on a road with what my mother would have called unsavory characters. Some were rocking out to the AC/DC song as if they were headed to a party, while others were weeping or begging for help. I even saw a few fighting to swim upstream, so to speak, without much luck. Seeing me, a few of the beggars tried to grab me. I wiggled away and looked at the road sign as I zipped around a curve, picking up speed for no apparent reason. Well, hell, I commented. This wasn't on my dance card for today. The song hit me again, and I laughed. Really? Come on now. Are you serious? I was on Route 666 with the song Highway to Hell playing loud and proud. Though I should have been scared out of my mind, I suddenly found it to be the most hilarious thing I'd heard of. My belly laugh affected even those wailing in torment as we flew down the road. One of them flipped me off as I sped past. "Oh, come on, it's funny," I replied. Ahead, I noted 4 toll booths. On approach, we slowed down. The person in the booth read something, and he went through one of 10 chutes, each with a picture over it. Once I was next in line, behind a man who tried to give false identification, I saw and recognized the 10 pictures. They were the faces from the pain chart seen in any doctor's office. "Cheeky but clever," I muttered, as the man ahead of me slid down the chute with a level 9 face. Sliding up to the booth, I smiled at the man inside, but he didn't look up at me. "Name," he said. "There's actually been a mistake. I got bumped onto the highway and..." "Name." Wow, grumpy. "Okay, Sabrina Grayson." He began to look through his list but got flustered. "Hey, Bob, do you have a Sabrina Grayson on your list?" "What's that, Ben?" My booth guy, obviously named Ben, who looked exactly like Bob, yelled back, "Sabrina Grayson, you imbecile." Bob looked through papers on a clipboard. "Nah, hell, Bill, you gotta..." "Nope, just looked." Bill, who looked just like Bob and Ben, said. Bob picked at his rotting teeth, spit something gross out, then yelled, "Hey, dipshit." When the man in the 4th booth, younger by a few decades from the others, and easily 100 pounds less, ignored him, Bob looked back at my booth. "Ben, what's the new kid's name again?" "Why the hell would I know?" The new kid, who looked nothing like the others, with his healthy skin, teeth, weight, and so on, sighed. "It's Trevor." "How many times do I need to tell you idiots that?" Bob opened his mouth to yell something, and Trevor beat him to it. "And no, she's not on my guest list. And you want to know why? 'Cause she's a necromancer. If you'd read the weekly bulletin, you'd recognize her name. She's new. Plus, a ticker came through for her." "Those things still work?" Ben asked, banging on some dusty box on the wall to his right. People behind me were piling up and beginning to yell things that likely were the reason why they were going to hell. "Damn thing doesn't work," Ben yelled at Trevor. "Is it plugged in?" the blonde boy said. "Screw you, of course it's..." He leaned down and I heard him say a slew of curse words. The light on the box came on and suddenly it began to spit out a ticker. Then another, and another, and another. And it wasn't going to stop anytime soon. "What the hell?" Ben complained as piles of paper began to fill his booth. "Ma'am," Trevor said, "that's like you're going to be running out 100 years of tickers. Please come down here." I looked at Ben, who angrily waved me off. With a shrug, I wheeled myself over to Trevor's booth. "Sorry about that, ma'am," he said. "I have your ticket right here, but I shouldn't have any..." "No worries, not a permanent stay. He just wants to meet you." "He who?" Trevor stamped my ticket and handed it to me with a raised eyebrow. Really? Did Satan exist? Did he want to meet me? What for? I cleared my throat, took the ticket, and played it cool. Oh, yeah, of course. When Trevor nodded, I added, Thanks for being so helpful. My first time and all. I appreciate it. Trevor's cute Iowa corn-fed boy face blushed and he smiled. Well, we don't normally get your kind here. And ignore the triple Bs. They've just been in there for a couple millennia. I opened my mouth more in shock than to speak when a phone rang. Trevor looked embarrassed and picked up the red phone on the wall next to him, which immediately scorched his skin. Though he obviously wanted to scream in pain, he held it in and said, Trevor Banner, booth 4, how can I help you? Trevor immediately pulled the phone away, and even I could hear someone yelling at him. Putting the phone by his head again, he replied with, Right away. Sorry, ma'am. He hung up and sheepishly looked at me, his hand and his ear smoking. His secretary's a bitch. Anyway, hold on to that ticket tight and don't lose it or you'll have a hard time leaving. Oh, and prepare yourself. He asked for you to get the special ride. What does that mean? It was nice meeting you, Sabrina. Same, Trevor, I said with a gulp of fear. Bye, he said, obviously a bit sad. I started to say goodbye as well, but it turned into a yelp as I suddenly took off like a rocket into a new tube that popped up out of nowhere that said special delivery. I was on my way to meet Lucifer himself. What could possibly go wrong? On that thought, I screamed and prayed for help. And she is on her way to meet Lucifer, who a lot of people really love in this book. So I'd be interested to see what you think if you get to that section in the story. Thanks so much for joining me for this other episode of Tamsin Silver's reading series for another part of Mark of the Necromancer. You can find more about me at tamsinsilver.com or at Falstaff Books. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care out there.